Alright, good day everyone. Welcome back to our topic for today. Let's have fun in science. Our topic for today is all about respiratory system. Our most essential learning competency explain how the respiratory and circulatory systems work together to transport nutrients, gases, and other molecules to and from the different parts of the body. Hello, I am Surgeon Russell Odeste, also known as Sir O. Objectives. At the end of the lesson, the learners must be able to identify the parts of the respiratory system, describe the functions of each part of the respiratory system, trace the path of air during inhalation and exhalation, describe how lungs and diaphragm work together. How many systems do we have in our body? Mm, we have 11 body systems in our body. He is Dr. Ren C. Ismail. We have digestive system, respiratory system, reproductive system, excretory system, nervous system, circulatory system, skeletal system, muscular system, integumentary system, lymphatic system, and endocrine system. Now let's talk about respiratory system. What are the parts of respiratory system? The inhalation and exhalation. Respiratory system, it is the breathing or what we call respiration. Breathing or respiration is composed of two processes. We have inhalation and also we have the exhalation. When we say inhalation, it is the process or taking in air makes the intercostal muscle push the ribs upward, sternum rise, this is the sternum, the diaphragm contract, and increase the lungs volume. On the other hand, exhalation expels carbon dioxide from the lungs into the atmosphere and reduces the volume of the lungs. Now, when we inhale, air passes through the nose and mouth. This is where it all begins. This is where the oxygen first enters in our body and also where carbon dioxide lives. Also in our nasal cavity, when the air comes into our nose, it gets filtered by tiny hairs and it moistened by the mucus that is in your nose. And what do you call the tiny hair? Correct, cilia. Now, this is a diagram of nasal cavity. We have the nostril and we have the oral cavity. And now what do you call on the next part of the respiratory system at the back of this? We have the pharynx. Now, when we say pharynx is also known as the throat, it is a tube-like part that serves as the common passageway of the air we breathe and the food we eat. On that part, we have the diagram. This is the pharynx. And on that, we have what we call epiglottis. When the food is swallowed or kapag nilulunok natin, we have epiglottis that closes the opening to the larynx to prevent food from entering the lungs. Because as you can see here, we have the two tubes. The two tubes is what we call the tube going to our lungs, and we have the other tube na papunta naman sa ating stomach. And that is what we call the tube yung papunta sa ating stomach is what we call the esophagus. Alright? And also we have the tube na papunta naman sa ating lungs, and that is what we call the trachea. Alright? We have the esophagus, and also we have what we call the trachea. That's why this epiglottis, as you can see in our epiglottis, kaya hindi natin pagsabayin. So ito yung nagko-close the opening to the larynx to prevent food from entering the lungs. Now, the next part is what we call the larynx. Larynx is also known as the voice box. It contains ciliated mucus lining, which helps remove foreign particles and humidify the air we breathe. It also generates sound when the air released from the lungs passes through the glottis and the vocal cords. This is the structure of the vocal cords. And the voice box or the larynx is 5 centimeters long. The next part is what we call the trachea. A trachea or windpipe includes walls made of C-shaped cartilage rings, this one, that are open all the time. The function of the trachea is to get rid of mucus that contain too much dust by coughing and expectoration. And also, the trachea is a tube that connects the lungs and also the larynx or the pharynx. Now, the next part is what we called the bronchi and the bronchioles. When we say bronchi, the plural form, and bronchos is the singular form, we have the bronchi are the two tubes connected to the lungs. This is what we call our bronchi. And the bronchioles, this one, the bronchioles are the smaller tubes of the left and the right bronchi that branch into the lungs. So ito yung parang sanga-sanga niya. And that is what we call the bronchioles. The bronchi and bronchioles are the passageways for air from the trachea to the alveoli of the lungs. Now, the parts other is what we call the cilia and the mucus. That ciliated mucus lining on our bronchi which helps remove foreign particles and humidify the air we breathe. So, yan. So, sila yung para magsasala. So, meron nung mga maliliit na tiny hair. And also, that is what we call, meron din tayo tinatawag na mucus. Kaya nga kung mapapansin nyo, pag may mga allergy ka, yung mga itis, meron tayong bronchitis, laryngitis, pharyngitis, some, yan, kapag nagkakaroon ng allergy, mostly yun yung naririnig natin. And those allergies and on the part of the respiratory system, dun siya naka-locate. So that is our what we call its anatomy or the structure niya. Now, next is what we call lungs. Lungs are the part of the respiratory system that fill the thoracic cavity or the chest chamber. And the main function is for respiration. It transports oxygen from the atmosphere into the bloodstream and releases waste material such as carbon dioxide from the body into the atmosphere. We have what we call two lungs. Lungs are composed of porous and spongy tissues. The human body has two lungs. We have the right lung and also we have the left lung. When we say right lung, it is larger and consists of three lobes, and the left lung that is smaller and consists of two lobes. Why two lobes? Just to give a space for the heart. Next is what we called within that lungs, we have what we call the alveoli. The alveoli, or what we call the air sacs, it consists of clusters of tiny sacs composed of layers of epithelial tissues. Each alveolus contains surfactants and is surrounded by capillaries. These capillaries, where the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen takes place between the alveoli and capillaries. As you can see here, so this is what we call our alveoli. This is where the exchange of gases, like the oxygen gas and the carbon dioxide, and the capillaries where the oxygen diffuses into the lungs, the lung capillary and the carbon dioxide exits the capillaries and enters the alveoli, meaning where the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen gas happens at alveoli. Kaya every time na nag-breathe tayo, so yung oxygen gas na pinapasok natin sa ating katawan, nag-exchange naman siya at ang inilalabas naman natin ay carbon dioxide. Now, other part of respiratory system, we have what we call a diaphragm. A diaphragm, a thin dome-shaped muscular part of the respiratory system that separates thoracic cavity or what we call the chest cavity. So this one, it separates the thoracic cavity or the chest cavity and the abdominal cavity. When we say abdominal cavity, it's the digestive system, the small and large intestine, the accessory organs such as the pancreas, gallbladder, and it is the muscle that enables the lungs to draw in air. So ito yung support, parang pinaka-support ng ating respiratory or ng lungs. Now, breathing involves the diaphragm and the muscle of the rib cage. We have what we call the rib cage. Ito yung ating ribs as a support. Now, as you can see here, when we inhale the air we breathe, what happened to our lungs? So, inhale ka nga. So, our lungs, the muscle contract and the rib cage expands. Okay? Kasi nalalagyan siya ng air. Nag-expand siya. And now, what happened to the diaphragm? The diaphragm flattens and the diaphragm moves downward. Kasi papasok yung air, mag-expand ang ating lungs, bababa at mapa-flat ang ating diaphragm. Now, what happens when we exhale? So, as the air exhale, as you can see, our diaphragm relaxes and rises, babalik, kasi ilalabas niya yung air or the carbon dioxide, the muscle and the rib cage relax. Okay? Babalik siya sa kanyang original position or magre-relax siya. So, decreases in volume. Now, if we're going to put that in a model, for example, in a lung model, this is how the air flows from the areas of high pressure to low pressure. For example, this is your lungs, this is a lung model, and this is your diaphragm. So, there's a, as you can see here, pag hihigitin mo yung balloon, pag hinigit mo yung balloon, papasok yung air. So, mag-expand tong lungs. Pero yung diaphragm mo, mag-move downward. Now, pag binitawan mo naman siya, okay, magkakaroon ng, madideplete. Mapapansin nyo, so, mag-move upward ang ating diaphragm and also, magkakaroon ng relaxation sa ating, yes, sa muscle or sa ating lungs. Okay? So, there's a decreases in volume kasi inilalabasan natin yung carbon dioxide. Now, breathing or respiration, we have two processes. We have the inhalation and exhalation. So, one respiration is equal to one inhalation and one exhalation. Okay? Normal adults makes 14 to 20 respirations per minute. Rate of respiration can vary according to the different conditions, such as when you exercise, hot weather, when you have an illness, and when you decreases when asleep. Okay, nagbabago yung ating respiration. And on that, so now let us identify the path of air during inhalation and exhalation. What do you call on this part? Correct. The nose or the nasal cavity. So, papasok yung air dito. Saan naman siya susunod? What do you call this? Alright, the pharynx. And after on that pharynx, so dadaan muna siya dito. Anong tawag natin dito sa ating voice box? The larynx. And pag tumaan siya sa larynx, pupunta naman siya sa ating windpipe or also known as, correct, the trachea. Pag dumaan siya sa ating trachea, meron tayong two branching tubes na ang tawag natin ay bronchi. Alright. And now, on that bronchi, meron tayong mga sanga-sanga na ang tinatawag natin to as, alright, the bronchioles. And sa dulo, pag pumasok na yung oxygen gas, dito sa dulo, there's an exchange of gases between the oxygen gas and the carbon dioxide. At ito'y nangyayari on that capillaries. And what do you call that? Alright, that's correct. The air sacs are the alveoli. At ngayon, ilalabas na natin siya sa ating nose or sa ating mouth with the help of the diaphragm. Alright, that's all. Thank you. So credits to the following. God bless everyone.